My name is Leslie Carter. I'm 35 years old, and while I was drowning in unbearable grief from losing my 12-year-old son David in a devastating car accident, my own mother Patricia convinced me to let her handle the paperwork for his $850,000 life insurance payout because I was too emotional to make financial decisions, then systematically stole every penny to purchase luxury vacation properties for the family, while I struggled to pay basic bills and funeral expenses. What she didn't know was that her heartless theft from a grieving mother, executed while I planned my child's burial, was about to trigger the most devastating legal reckoning she could imagine, one that would cost her everything she thought she could steal from my son's memory and my financial survival. The life insurance policy that would become the center of my family's betrayal had been something David and I had discussed just months before his death, when I was updating my financial planning and explaining to him why responsible parents make provisions for their children's security and future needs. At 12 years old, David was mature enough to understand basic financial concepts, and he had been proud that his mother was planning carefully for both of our futures. "Mom, why do you need life insurance on me?" David had asked with the curiosity that characterized everything about his bright, inquisitive mind. "I'm just a kid, and I don't have any money or anything important that needs protecting." "Sweetie, life insurance isn't about protecting money. It's about making sure that if something terrible ever happened to you, I would have the resources to take time off work to grieve and heal without worrying about paying bills," I had explained, never imagining that this conversation would be one of our last serious discussions about planning and responsibility. David had nodded with the solemn understanding he brought to important topics, then hugged me and said, "I hope you never need that money, Mom, but I'm glad you're thinking about taking care of yourself if something bad happens." The memory of that conversation would haunt me in the months following his death, as I realized that David's own words about taking care of myself had been twisted by my family into justification for stealing the money he had understood was meant to help me survive the unthinkable loss of losing him. David had been the center of my world since his birth, a brilliant, kind, funny child who excelled in school, played competitive soccer, and had dreams of becoming either a veterinarian or an engineer depending on which science project had captured his imagination that week. As a single mother, I had worked 2 jobs to provide him with opportunities and experiences, but more importantly, I had tried to raise him with values of kindness, responsibility, and integrity that would guide him throughout his life. "You're raising an amazing young man," his teachers consistently told me during parent conferences. David is not only academically gifted, but he's also compassionate, helpful, and shows leadership qualities that make him a positive influence on his classmates. The pride I felt in David's character and achievements was the driving force behind every sacrifice I made as a single parent, every extra shift I worked, and every careful financial decision I made to ensure he had the best possible foundation for his future. The life insurance policy was just one part of comprehensive planning that included education savings, emergency funds, and careful budgeting that prioritized his needs above my own wants. The car accident that took David's life happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon in October, when a drunk driver ran a red light and hit the school bus David was riding home from soccer practice. Of the 32 children on that bus, David was one of 3 who didn't survive the impact, and he died instantly from injuries so severe that I was grateful he hadn't suffered. "Mrs. Carter, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this," the hospital social worker had said when she called me at work. "But David was critically injured in a bus accident, and we need you to come to the hospital immediately." The drive to the hospital was the longest 20 minutes of my life, as I tried to prepare myself for whatever I would find while praying desperately that my 12-year-old son would somehow be okay, despite the seriousness in the social worker's voice. But nothing could have prepared me for learning that David was gone, that the bright, loving child who had hugged me goodbye that morning would never come home again. The grief that followed David's death was unlike anything I had ever experienced or could have imagined possible. The physical pain of losing him felt like my chest was being crushed, making it difficult to breathe, eat, or sleep. The emotional devastation was so overwhelming that I struggled to complete basic tasks like answering the phone, opening mail, or making simple decisions about daily life. "Leslie, you need to let me help you with the practical things while you focus on healing," my mother Patricia had said during the first week after David's death, when I was barely functioning and couldn't seem to process information about funeral arrangements, insurance claims, or financial responsibilities. Patricia's offer to handle paperwork and practical matters seemed like a blessing during those early days of grief, when I couldn't concentrate long enough to read insurance forms or understand the legal documents that required signatures and decisions. I was grateful to have family support during the most difficult period of my life. "I'll take care of everything related to David's life insurance and make sure the money is properly managed while you recover from this trauma," Patricia assured me, with what seemed like genuine care and concern. "You're too emotional right now to make good financial decisions, and I want to protect you from making mistakes that could affect your future security." The suggestion that I was too emotional to handle financial decisions while planning my child's funeral seemed reasonable at the time, since I was indeed struggling to think clearly about anything beyond getting through each day without my son. I trusted my mother to act in my best interest while I focused on grieving and trying to find some way to continue living without David. But what I didn't understand was that Patricia's offer to help with paperwork was actually the beginning of a systematic plan to steal David's life insurance money for her own benefit, using my grief and vulnerability as cover for financial crimes that would devastate me when I was already facing the worst loss imaginable. Have you ever been so overwhelmed by grief that you trusted someone completely to handle important matters, only to discover later that they had exploited your vulnerability for their own gain? That's exactly what I experienced as Patricia positioned herself as my protector, while actually planning to steal the money that was supposed to help me survive losing my child. The $850,000 life insurance payout was processed remarkably quickly, arriving just 2 weeks after David's death when I was still in the early stages of grief and barely able to function in my daily life. The money was substantial enough to allow me to take extended time off work, pay for grief counseling, and maintain financial stability while I figured out how to rebuild my life without the child who had been its center. The insurance money has been deposited, and I've set up proper accounts to manage it responsibly, Patricia informed me during the 3rd week after David's funeral. "You don't need to worry about any of the financial details right now. Just focus on taking care of yourself and healing from this terrible loss." I was grateful for her management of financial matters that seemed overwhelming and irrelevant compared to the magnitude of losing David. Money felt meaningless when my child was gone, and I appreciated having someone handle practical concerns while I struggled with basic survival and the impossible task of learning to live without him. But as the weeks turned into months and my acute grief began to evolve into something more manageable, I started to realize that I needed to understand my financial situation and begin making plans for rebuilding my life. David's insurance money was supposed to provide security during this transition, but when I asked Patricia for account information, her responses became evasive and concerning. "Leslie, you're still not ready to handle financial stress," Patricia would say when I asked about the insurance money. "Let me continue managing everything until you're emotionally stronger and can make good decisions about your future." The continued insistence that I was too emotionally fragile to know about my own financial situation began to feel patronizing and suspicious, especially as I noticed that Patricia's lifestyle seemed to have improved significantly since David's death. She was taking expensive vacations, wearing new clothes, and talking about real estate investments that seemed inconsistent with her previous financial situation. "Mom, I need to know what's happening with David's insurance money," I finally insisted during a conversation 6 months after his death. "I'm ready to start making decisions about my future, and I need to understand what resources are available to help me rebuild my life." "Leslie, I've been making some smart investments with the insurance money to ensure it grows, rather than just sitting in a low-interest account," Patricia replied with obvious discomfort at my questions. "The money is safe and growing, but it's tied up in investments that can't be easily accessed right now." The vague explanation about investments that couldn't be easily accessed was both confusing and alarming, since life insurance proceeds are typically liquid and available for the beneficiary's immediate needs. Patricia's reluctance to provide specific information about how David's money was being managed raised red flags that I couldn't ignore. "What kind of investments require David's insurance money to be completely inaccessible?" I asked, my grief beginning to be joined by anger at Patricia's evasiveness about money that was legally mine and desperately needed for my survival. "Real estate investments that provide better long-term returns than simple savings accounts," Patricia answered with increasing defensiveness. "I'm protecting your financial future by making smart decisions that you're not emotionally ready to understand or appreciate." The revelation that David's insurance money had been invested in real estate without my knowledge or consent was shocking and devastating. But what I learned next would prove that Patricia's investments were actually theft designed to benefit herself rather than protect my financial future. Over the following weeks, as I pressed for more specific information about how David's life insurance money was being invested, I began to discover the true scope of Patricia's betrayal and the extent to which she had used my grief as cover for stealing the money that was supposed to help me survive losing my child. "I need detailed information about these real estate investments," I demanded during a confrontation that I had been avoiding but could no longer postpone. "I want account statements, property deeds, and documentation showing exactly how David's insurance money is being used." "Leslie, you're being paranoid and ungrateful," Patricia replied with anger that revealed her discomfort with my questions. "I've been protecting your money and making it grow while you've been too emotional to make rational decisions. You should be thanking me instead of questioning my management of your affairs." The defensive hostility in her response was so different from her previous expressions of caring concern that I realized Patricia was hiding something significant about how she had been handling David's insurance money during the months when I was too grief-stricken to ask questions. "Mom, that money belongs to me, and I have the right to know exactly how it's being managed," I said, drawing on anger that was beginning to cut through my grief. "David died, and his insurance money is supposed to help me survive that loss. I need to know where every penny is and how it's being used." What Patricia told me next would shatter my understanding of my family's character and reveal that they had been planning to steal David's insurance money while I was planning his funeral and struggling with the early stages of grief. "The money has been used to purchase 2 beautiful vacation properties that the whole family can enjoy," Patricia announced as if she was sharing good news rather than admitting to theft. "We bought a gorgeous beach house in South Carolina and a mountain cabin in North Carolina that will provide wonderful family retreat opportunities for years to come." The casual revelation that David's $850,000 life insurance payout had been used to purchase vacation homes for the family while I struggled to pay basic bills was so shocking that I couldn't initially process what I was hearing. My son's death benefits had been stolen to buy luxury properties that I would never see while I faced financial hardship during the worst period of my life. "You spent David's insurance money on vacation houses?" I asked, making sure I understood the magnitude of what she was admitting. "You took the money that was supposed to help me survive losing my child and used it to buy real estate for family vacations?" "Leslie, David would want our family to be happy and create good memories together," Patricia replied with twisted logic that attempted to justify theft by claiming to know what my dead son would have wanted. "These properties will bring the family together and provide healing spaces where everyone can recover from the trauma of losing David. Have you ever been told that your dead child would want their insurance money spent on other people's vacation properties rather than helping their grieving mother survive?" That's exactly what I was hearing as Patricia tried to justify her theft by claiming David would approve of her crimes. "The beach house has 6 bedrooms and ocean views that will be perfect for family gatherings," Patricia continued, apparently expecting me to be excited about vacation properties purchased with my son's death benefits. "And the mountain cabin has a fireplace and hiking trails that will provide peaceful retreat opportunities for everyone who needs healing time." The detailed description of luxury amenities purchased with David's insurance money while I was eating ramen noodles and struggling to pay rent was both cruel and revealing about Patricia's complete lack of understanding regarding the purpose of life insurance proceeds. "Mom, that money was supposed to help me take time off work to grieve and pay for counseling and basic living expenses while I figured out how to survive without David," I said, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. "You stole my son's death benefits to buy vacation homes while I've been struggling financially. Leslie, you're being selfish and short-sighted about this situation." Patricia responded with the same dismissive tone she had used when positioning herself as my financial protector. "These properties are investments that will benefit everyone, including you. You can use them whenever you need healing space." The suggestion that I should be grateful for access to vacation properties purchased with my own son's insurance money while I faced financial hardship was so absurd and cruel that it perfectly captured Patricia's complete moral bankruptcy regarding her theft of David's death benefits. But what made the betrayal even more devastating was learning that my entire extended family had been involved in planning and enjoying the vacation properties purchased with David's insurance money, treating my son's death as a financial opportunity rather than the devastating loss it was for his mother. "Your brothers helped us find the properties and negotiate the purchases," Patricia said, apparently expecting me to appreciate their involvement in stealing my son's insurance money. "Everyone is so excited about having beautiful family retreat spaces where we can all come together and support each other." The revelation that my siblings had participated in identifying and purchasing vacation properties with David's death benefits while I grieved in isolation was devastating proof that my entire family had viewed my son's insurance money as a windfall rather than recognizing it as compensation for the unthinkable loss of a child. "We're planning a celebration at the beach house next month to officially dedicate the property and show everyone the beautiful space we've created," Patricia continued, apparently oblivious to the cruelty of celebrating vacation purchases made with stolen insurance money from my dead child. The announcement that they were planning a party to celebrate vacation properties purchased with David's death benefits was so morally bankrupt that I realized my family was fundamentally incapable of understanding the ethical and legal violations involved in their theft of my son's insurance money. But as I processed the magnitude of Patricia's betrayal and began to understand that my entire family had participated in stealing David's life insurance money, I also began to remember crucial details about the insurance policy that Patricia had apparently overlooked in her rush to claim and spend my son's death benefits. The woman who had stolen my child's insurance money while claiming to protect me from emotional financial decisions was about to learn that her theft had violated federal insurance regulations and constituted criminal fraud that would cost her far more than she had stolen from my survival during the worst period of my life. The devastating scope of my family's betrayal became increasingly clear as I discovered the extent of their planning and coordination in stealing David's insurance money, treating my son's death as a financial opportunity rather than recognizing the devastating impact their theft would have on my ability to survive and heal from losing my child. "Leslie, you really should come see the beach house," my brother Michael called to share his excitement about the vacation property purchased with my son's death benefits. "It's absolutely beautiful, with panoramic ocean views and a gourmet kitchen that's perfect for family gatherings. Patricia did an amazing job choosing properties that will bring everyone together." The enthusiasm about vacation amenities purchased with David's insurance money while I struggled to afford grief counseling and basic living expenses was both personally devastating and legally significant, since it demonstrated my family's awareness that they were enjoying luxuries funded by my son's death benefits. "The mountain cabin is just as spectacular," my sister Jennifer added during a family call where they tag-teamed me with descriptions of stolen luxury. "It has a stone fireplace, wraparound deck, and access to hiking trails that provide the perfect peaceful retreat atmosphere. David would love knowing that his insurance money helped create such beautiful family spaces." The twisted logic that my dead 12-year-old son would love knowing his death benefits were funding vacation properties rather than helping his grieving mother was both psychologically cruel and legally incriminating, since it demonstrated their understanding that the properties had been purchased with David's insurance money. But what made their betrayal even more devastating was learning that they had been planning elaborate celebrations of the vacation properties while I remained isolated in my grief, struggling with financial hardship that their theft had created during my most vulnerable period. We're having a huge celebration at the beach house to officially dedicate the property and show everyone the amazing space we've created with the insurance money, Patricia announced during a phone call that revealed the extent of their plans. Everyone's invited except you might not be ready for such a big family gathering. The planned celebration of vacation properties purchased with my son's death benefits, combined with the assumption that I might not be ready for family gatherings, perfectly captured their ability to steal from me while positioning my exclusion as consideration for my emotional state. Have you ever learned that your family was celebrating expensive purchases made with money stolen from your dead child, while expressing concern about your emotional readiness to witness their enjoyment of those stolen luxuries? That's exactly what I was experiencing as Patricia revealed their party plans. The celebration is scheduled for what would have been David's 13th birthday, Jennifer added, apparently unaware of the cruel irony of celebrating stolen vacation properties on my dead son's birthday. We thought it would be meaningful to dedicate the family retreat spaces on a day that honors David's memory. The decision to celebrate vacation properties purchased with David's insurance money on what would have been his 13th birthday was so cruel and tone-deaf that it revealed my family's complete inability to understand the psychological impact of their theft on a grieving mother. But while my family planned their celebration of stolen luxury, I was beginning to research the legal aspects of life insurance policies and discovering that Patricia's theft involved federal crimes that carried serious criminal penalties and civil liability far beyond the amount she had stolen. Life insurance policies contain specific beneficiary protections and consent requirements that prevent unauthorized use of death benefits. Attorney Sarah Mitchell explained during my initial consultation about recovering David's stolen insurance money. If your mother accessed and spent the insurance proceeds without your written consent, she committed federal insurance fraud. The legal framework for prosecuting Patricia's theft was more comprehensive than I had initially realized, with federal statutes specifically designed to protect life insurance beneficiaries from family members who might exploit grief and vulnerability to steal death benefits designated for surviving family members. We need to review your son's original policy documents to understand the specific consent requirements and distribution procedures, Sarah continued, as we began building the case that would expose my family's crimes. Many policies require written authorization from beneficiaries before funds can be distributed or invested, especially for large amounts. But what proved to be the most crucial aspect of the legal case was a detail about David's insurance policy that I had forgotten during my acute grief, but which would ultimately destroy Patricia's defense and ensure her prosecution for federal crimes. The policy contains a specific clause requiring the beneficiary's written consent for any distribution or investment of proceeds exceeding $10,000, Sarah explained after reviewing David's insurance documents. Your mother's use of the full $850,000 without your written authorization constitutes clear violation of federal insurance regulations. The discovery that Patricia's theft had violated specific consent requirements written into David's policy meant that her crimes weren't just family financial disputes, but clear federal violations that would be prosecuted by insurance fraud specialists who took such cases very seriously. We can pursue both criminal charges and civil recovery, including not just the stolen insurance money, but also punitive damages that reflect the emotional harm caused by stealing from a grieving mother, Sarah continued as we prepared the comprehensive case that would expose my family's theft. But perhaps the most satisfying aspect of building the legal case was learning that my family's own social media posts and public celebrations of the vacation properties would provide perfect evidence of their crimes and their complete lack of remorse for stealing David's death benefits. Every family gathering at the stolen properties, every social media post about enjoying the beach house and mountain cabin, and every statement about using David's insurance money for family benefit is evidence that will be used to prosecute their crimes, Sarah explained as we documented their public enjoyment of stolen luxury. The systematic documentation of my family's theft and their celebration of vacation properties purchased with David's insurance money was creating a comprehensive case that would be impossible for them to deny or minimize during prosecution. Ms. Carter, we've reviewed the evidence and are prepared to file federal charges against your mother and any family members who participated in the theft and use of your son's life insurance proceeds. Federal prosecutor David Chen informed me as the criminal case reached the filing stage. The federal government's interest in prosecuting my family's crimes was both validating and empowering, confirming that their theft represented serious violations of laws designed to protect grieving families from financial exploitation during their most vulnerable periods. As Patricia and my siblings continued planning their celebration of vacation properties purchased with David's stolen insurance money, they remained completely unaware that federal investigators were preparing arrest warrants and asset seizure orders that would destroy their party and begin their education about the serious consequences of stealing from grieving mothers. The timing was perfect. Their celebration would provide the ideal setting for exposing their crimes, while ensuring that dozens of witnesses would observe their arrest and understand the true source of the vacation properties they had been praising and enjoying. The elaborate beach house celebration that my family organized to commemorate their theft of David's insurance money was held on what would have been his 13th birthday, creating a cruel irony that perfectly captured their moral bankruptcy, while providing the ideal setting for the federal investigation that would expose their crimes and recover my son's stolen death benefits. "Welcome, everyone, to our beautiful new family retreat," Patricia announced to the 40 relatives and friends who had gathered to celebrate vacation properties purchased with my dead son's insurance money. "Today is special because we're dedicating these wonderful spaces on a day that honors David's memory and celebrates the family unity his life insurance has made possible." The twisted narrative that linked David's memory to family unity, funded by his stolen death benefits, was both psychologically cruel and legally incriminating, since it demonstrated Patricia's public acknowledgement that the vacation properties had been purchased with my son's insurance money. The beach house itself was everything I could never have afforded on my income. 6 bedrooms, panoramic ocean views, gourmet kitchen, and luxury furnishings that represented the financial security I had lost when Patricia stole David's death benefits during my period of acute grief and vulnerability. "Look at this incredible ocean view," guests were saying as they toured the property purchased with my son's insurance money. "Patricia made such smart investments with the insurance money. These properties will provide amazing family memories for generations to come." The praise for Patricia's smart investments, while admiring amenities purchased with stolen death benefits, created exactly the kind of witness testimony that would be valuable during criminal prosecution, since it documented my family's public awareness of the funding source for their vacation luxuries. But what made the celebration even more cruel and legally damaging was the elaborate photo documentation that my family was creating, posting hundreds of images on social media that showed them enjoying vacation properties while celebrating on my dead son's birthday. "Amazing beach house celebration on David's birthday," Jennifer posted on Facebook with photos of expensive catering and luxury accommodations. "So grateful for the family investments that made this beautiful retreat possible. David would love seeing everyone together in such a gorgeous setting." The social media posts linking the celebration to David's birthday while crediting family investments for the vacation property provided perfect evidence of their consciousness of guilt and their complete lack of remorse for stealing my son's death benefits. Have you ever watched your family celebrate stolen vacation properties on your dead child's birthday while posting about how much your child would love seeing everyone enjoy luxuries purchased with his insurance money? That's exactly what I was experiencing as I monitored their social media posts, documenting their celebration of theft. Patricia's beach house is absolutely perfect for family gatherings. Relatives were posting throughout the afternoon as they documented every aspect of the vacation property purchased with David's stolen insurance money. The kitchen is a chef's dream, and the oceanfront deck is ideal for celebrating special occasions and creating lasting family memories. The detailed documentation of luxury amenities while celebrating on David's birthday created comprehensive evidence of my family's enjoyment of stolen property, but more importantly, it provided federal investigators with clear proof of their crimes and their public celebration of theft from a grieving mother. But while my family celebrated their stolen vacation properties without any awareness of the legal consequences heading their way, federal agents were finalizing arrest warrants and asset seizure orders that would end their party and begin their prosecution for insurance fraud and theft from protected death benefits. At exactly 3 p.m., when Patricia's celebration was at its peak and all 40 invited guests were present to witness the occasion, FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez and her team arrived with federal marshals and comprehensive search and seizure warrants that would end the birthday celebration and begin my family's education about federal crimes involving life insurance theft. Patricia Carter, Michael Carter, and Jennifer Carter, you are under arrest for insurance fraud, theft of protected death benefits, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud a beneficiary, Agent Rodriguez announced as she placed handcuffs on my family members in front of their shocked party guests. The silence that followed their arrests was absolute and profound as 40 people processed what they were witnessing. The family members whose smart investments they had been celebrating were being arrested for federal crimes involving theft of life insurance money from a grieving mother. The vacation properties being celebrated today were purchased through unauthorized theft of life insurance proceeds belonging to Leslie Carter, whose son David died in a car accident, Agent Rodriguez announced to the stunned gathering of relatives and friends. The comprehensive explanation of the crimes was being delivered to an audience that included all the people who had been praising Patricia's investment decisions while enjoying amenities purchased with my son's stolen death benefits. These properties and all assets purchased with stolen life insurance money are being seized by the federal government for recovery and restitution to the legal beneficiary, another agent announced as asset forfeiture specialists began documenting the luxury beach house and preparing seizure paperwork. The systematic seizure of stolen vacation properties was both thorough and satisfying, with federal agents photographing and cataloging every expensive amenity that had been purchased with David's insurance money while I struggled with grief and financial hardship. But the most meaningful moment came when I finally had the opportunity to address the assembled guests who had been celebrating vacation properties purchased with my dead son's insurance money without understanding the criminal source of funding for their enjoyment. 13 months ago, my 12-year-old son David died in a car accident, and his $850,000 life insurance payout was supposed to help me survive the worst loss imaginable, I announced to the stunned party guests who were now learning the truth about how their celebration had been funded. The comprehensive explanation of my family's theft was being delivered to an audience that included many of the same people who had praised their generosity and investment wisdom throughout the afternoon, while enjoying amenities purchased with stolen death benefits. While I was drowning in grief and struggling to pay basic bills, my mother and siblings stole David's entire insurance payout to purchase these vacation properties, claiming my dead son would want the family to enjoy luxury retreats rather than helping his mother survive losing him. Every luxury amenity you've been admiring, every expensive meal you've enjoyed, and every vacation memory you've created today was funded by life insurance money that was stolen from a grieving mother while she struggled to afford food and counseling after losing her child. The detailed accounting of how their celebration had been funded through death benefit theft was both personally cathartic and legally significant, providing public testimony about crimes that had enabled their afternoon of luxury enjoyment. As federal agents continued processing the scene and my family members were transported to federal custody, I realized that this moment represented not just justice for their theft, but also vindication of David's memory and recovery of the financial security that was supposed to help me rebuild my life after losing him. The people who had stolen my son's insurance money while claiming to protect me from emotional financial decisions were finally facing consequences that reflected the magnitude of their betrayal of my trust and their violation of federal laws protecting grieving families from insurance fraud. The comprehensive legal and financial resolution that followed my family's dramatic arrest at their stolen money beach house celebration moved through federal court with remarkable efficiency, driven by overwhelming evidence of their crimes and clear documentation of how they had systematically exploited my grief to steal David's life insurance money for luxury vacation properties. Patricia, Michael, and Jennifer Carter, ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple federal felony charges, including insurance fraud, theft of protected death benefits, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud a beneficiary, receiving sentences ranging from 3 to 7 years in federal prison, plus comprehensive restitution requirements that would ensure I recovered not just my stolen insurance money, but also substantial additional damages. The defendants systematically exploited the plaintiff's grief and vulnerability following her child's death to steal life insurance proceeds specifically designated for the surviving parent's financial security, Federal Judge Patricia said during their sentencing hearing. This case represents one of the most callous examples of family financial exploitation imaginable, targeting a grieving mother during her period of greatest vulnerability. The judicial condemnation was both personally validating and legally significant, establishing important precedent for protecting life insurance beneficiaries from family members who exploit grief and trauma to steal death benefits designated for surviving parents and family members. But perhaps more importantly, the asset forfeiture and restitution process resulted in recovery of not just David's original $850,000 insurance payout, but an additional $500,000 in damages, penalties, and punitive awards that reflected the emotional harm and financial exploitation I had suffered during my most vulnerable period. Ms. Carter, the Comprehensive Restitution Award ensures that you receive not just your son's stolen insurance money, but also compensation for the additional hardship and trauma caused by your family's theft during your grief process. Civil attorney Sarah Mitchell explained as we finalized the recovery process. The enhanced restitution meant that David's insurance money would ultimately provide even greater financial security than originally intended, creating resources that would honor his memory while supporting both my recovery and my ability to help other grieving families avoid similar exploitation. Using David's recovered insurance money exactly as it was intended, I took extended time for grief counseling and healing while also establishing the David Carter Memorial Scholarship Fund, which provides educational support for children who have lost parents in accidents while also offering legal assistance to grieving families whose life insurance benefits are threatened by family exploitation. Leslie's courage in prosecuting her own family for stealing her son's life insurance money has inspired dozens of other grieving parents to come forward about similar exploitation. Foundation Director Dr. Margaret Wilson said during our annual memorial dinner, "Her case has created awareness and legal protections that will help prevent similar thefts from devastating other families during their most vulnerable times." The foundation had provided emergency assistance to over 150 grieving families whose life insurance benefits had been threatened or stolen by relatives, while also helping secure criminal convictions against more than 30 family members who had exploited grief and trauma to commit insurance fraud. But perhaps the most personally meaningful aspect of the resolution was the way David's Scholarship Fund had created educational opportunities for children facing their own family tragedies, transforming his death benefits into resources that would help other families survive loss and build positive futures despite devastating circumstances. "David's scholarship helped me finish high school after my dad died," one recipient wrote to thank me. "I was going to drop out to work and help my mom with bills, but having educational support meant I could focus on my studies and eventually get into college. David's memory is helping other kids succeed even when they face terrible losses." The impact of David's scholarship program on other children facing family tragedy was both emotionally healing and spiritually meaningful, demonstrating that his insurance money was ultimately creating exactly the kind of positive legacy he would have wanted to leave behind. Have you ever been able to transform your child's death benefits into resources that helped dozens of other families survive similar tragedies? That's exactly what I experienced as David's stolen and recovered insurance money became the foundation for protecting other grieving parents from family financial exploitation. Your willingness to fight for your son's insurance money despite family pressure has changed how law enforcement and insurance companies handle beneficiary protection, attorney Sarah Mitchell explained during our final case review. "The legal precedent established by your prosecution has made it much easier to pursue family members who steal from grieving parents. The legal changes that had emerged from my family's prosecution were both personally satisfying and professionally important, creating stronger protections for life insurance beneficiaries and clearer criminal penalties for relatives who exploit grief to commit financial fraud. But the most personally healing development was the way my pursuit of justice for David's stolen insurance money had connected me with other grieving parents who had faced similar exploitation, creating a community of support that understood both the trauma of losing children and the additional devastation of family financial betrayal. I never imagined that other families had stolen from grieving parents, one mother told me during a support group meeting. Learning about your case gave me the courage to report my sister for stealing my daughter's insurance money, and now I've recovered the funds that were supposed to help me survive losing her. The ripple effect of education and legal action that had emerged from my family's crimes was both personally meaningful and professionally significant, demonstrating that one person's pursuit of justice could create awareness and protection for thousands of other potential victims. 3 years after my family's federal convictions for stealing David's life insurance money, I was invited to deliver the keynote address at the National Conference on Insurance Fraud Prevention, speaking to an audience of investigators, attorneys, and victim advocates about protecting grieving families from financial exploitation during their most vulnerable periods. My family stole my 12-year-old son's $850,000 life insurance payout to buy vacation properties while I struggled to pay for food and grief counseling, I told the audience of fraud prevention specialists. Their theft wasn't just a financial crime. It was an assault on my ability to survive losing my child, and an exploitation of grief that no parent should ever experience. The presentation was both educational and cathartic, allowing me to honor David's memory while helping professionals understand the unique vulnerability of grieving parents and the importance of strong legal protections for life insurance beneficiaries. As I concluded my keynote with a comprehensive tribute to David's life and the positive legacy created by his Memorial Scholarship Fund, I realized that my family's theft had ultimately led to outcomes that were more meaningful and impactful than simply maintaining private access to his insurance money. The stolen death benefits had been recovered with substantial enhancements. Their crimes had created stronger legal protections for other grieving families, and David's memory had been honored through educational opportunities that would help other children succeed despite facing family tragedies. Most importantly, I had learned that a mother's love for her child transcends grief and extends to protecting other families from the kind of exploitation that could destroy their ability to survive loss and rebuild meaningful lives after devastating tragedy. If you're reading this and you're dealing with family members who are pressuring you to share life insurance benefits or exploiting your grief to access death benefits, please know that there are legal protections and advocacy resources available to help you defend your financial security during your most vulnerable time. Sometimes the people who claim to be helping you manage practical matters during grief are actually positioning themselves to steal resources that were specifically intended to help you survive loss. But life insurance fraud is a serious federal crime, and grieving families have the right to protection from relatives who would exploit tragedy for personal financial gain. If this story resonated with your own experiences, please hit that subscribe button and share your experiences in the comments below. Have you ever faced family financial exploitation during a period of grief or trauma? How did you handle relatives who tried to claim resources that were intended for your survival and healing? Your story might help someone else who's facing similar exploitation during their darkest moments. Thank you for joining me on this journey from devastating loss through family betrayal to ultimate justice and meaningful legacy creation. Remember that protecting your deceased loved ones' intended gifts to you is not just about money. It's about honoring their memory and ensuring that their final act of love serves its intended purpose of helping you survive and rebuild after loss. See you in our next story here at Her Sweet Revenge.